Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Lavigne Show here just west of Breton in Alberta, and it is snowing, and still snowing. So, winter's not quite left us yet, but we're getting through it. First, just like I did on the last time I did this episode, because we're going to get into the Khalistani movement, we're going to have some conversations about what's going on there, why are they in Canada, where did it come from, what's the history, and what we're going to do is we're going to be speaking to a gentleman by the name of Harjeet Singh, who reached out to me after he noticed me online having conversations, and he said, "Look, I have." I have a bit of an opportunity here to share some of you the history and the progression of this movement. And a lot of Canadians don't get to this information. So I said, oh, great. Thank you very much. I'd love to hear a little bit more about it because as a Canadian, I know nothing. Okay. So when we sat into school and we're doing all our Sesame Street and we're hanging out as Canadians playing hockey in the streets, this is not a topic that anybody brought to us ever. So what I started to do is I started to explore it a little bit. I've been following some reporters in Canada, independent reporters who've been covering it. And I'm wondering, quite literally, what's going on? I know nothing about this. So I jumped into a space with a gentleman, Jazz, the journo, I think it was. And it was an interesting conversation because I'm a nerd, right? I'm trying to get knowledge. This is what drives me is knowledge. So I went there for the purpose of knowledge, but it was an adversarial approach, though. There was some conversation there, which started off very uncomfortable. It didn't get any better, and it ended off with a lot of messages in my inbox all over the internet, and people were poking some of this information towards me and saying, "Hey, look, you need to look a little bit deeper." From all sides. So that's exactly what I'm doing. This is basically the third time I've touched this subject in the last couple of months because I really do want to know about what's going on. Now, as a freedom person, somebody that's been covering the freedom movement here in Canada for quite some time now, I know with a fact that our state media is lying about a bunch of things when it comes to what they were up to. Occupiers, Nazis, racists, all this kind of stuff. That's not what these people were here in Canada as they were trying to have their voices heard. And then, of course, when it comes to things like separating, right now, Alberta, there seems to be something happening around here. There's a lot of people talking about independence, separation, even statehood stuff. And just having that conversation, not even taking a position and not even pushing for it, just having the conversation has a lot of people coming at me. I'm trying to break up Canada. I'm a traitor and all those kind of things. So I'm getting a taste of what it's like to actually see the world for what it is, try to have conversations, and then there's groups coming at me with narratives and accusations and even threats. I have experienced threats just by having a conversation. So I'm not surprised when somebody reaches out to me and says, "Hey, Jason, you seem like a nice gentleman. You seem to be very curious. You may not have the whole picture. There's a lot more to this. If you're getting a lot of your information from media, state media and independent media, you may not have the full picture." So what Harjeet has offered is going to take us through a bit of a presentation, some of the history. He's going to introduce himself and introduce to us what the movement's about. Now, as part of my disclaimer, this is a conversation. I am not putting a flag in the front of my house saying, "Hey, I support." And I'm also not ripping down flags or pointing at them and saying we need to get rid of those because I don't know. But what I do know is I want to save Canada. I want Canadians to be safe, and I want people to prosper here. I'm not anti-immigration. I am for legal immigration. My wife's an immigrant. But what I do want is a prosperous Canada for my children and for the next generations after that. So to do that, I'm going to learn. I'm going to spend the time and take the effort to learn. I'm not casting judgment, and I'm not here to decide. I'm not a judge. I'm not going to say this side is right, that side is right, anything like that. I'm here to learn. So if you're here for that too, you're in the right spot. And I hope you do learn some things here too. Some people are going to be angry, some people are going to be pleased, and some people are going to be confused. So if you're here for information, you're here for the right stuff, I hope you enjoy this. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring in Harjeet Singh. Good afternoon. How are you, my friend?
Good afternoon, Jason. Thank you for having me here. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And as you heard that intro here, I am curious. I want to know more. And I know there's more than two sides to every story. And as we saw here in Canada, we can see what our media does, how they vilify Canadians who are fighting for things, whether you're in Quebec separation, Alberta separation, or just looking for freedom and answers from our government. I've seen it with my naked eye. So this is why I'm going into this with an open mind. And I want to kind of learn some of the history. I don't know any of this history. So if you don't mind, let's go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of let people know who you are.
Yep. Yep. I'll first introduce myself and I'll kind of touch upon what you raised, right? That why it is important for Canadians to learn about this topic. It's very important in today's connected world to know where all tyranny is persisting in whatever shape and form, because we cannot be insular from it. No matter how much we want, the fact is the world has become a global village, and we cannot just assume that we can have liberty while the whole world is suffering under tyranny. That's an unfortunate reality. So, having said that, I am a recent immigrant. I am based in Washington State, in United States. I moved to US in 2013, almost now 12 years back. I was born and raised in a state of Punjab in the northwest part of India. And I'm a third generation veteran, as typical in my family, and in most of the Sikh families, we either take to, joining the services or farming or, trucking. It's another business we are big into. So I joined the forces. And then after that, was lucky to have worked with different MNCs, and then was lucky to actually move to this land of the free and the brave, and have been living the dream since then. And having, one of the first things that hit me was when I came in here, having tasted liberty in its true sense. Especially somebody who's coming from an area where you don't have those many freedoms. I know if you are born and brought up here, you probably feel, oh, your freedoms are gone, and you are right. But but like people like me who come from a very different, experience, wherein, there's no concept of any liberty, like freedom of speech. There is no, you could get locked up, tortured, disappeared by your government anytime for the mere act of maybe even criticizing a minister. For me, the freedoms that I enjoy here, I'm very grateful for.
Wow, that's a good way to put it. And you're right, because even though we sat through some lockdowns and we were kind of felt a little oppressed at sometimes, we
Yep.
don't really know what it's like to lose our freedoms completely. Like
Yeah.
if somebody just kind of vanished from my family, we would know. And we'd be very upset about that. So thank you for laying that out. And let's go ahead and now, because we don't have a lot of time and there's a
Yep.
lot to talk about, let's go ahead and
Yeah.
jump into a little bit of the history of this movement.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to start off from where you just put it up, right? It is important. I think most of the Canadians, especially, must have heard a lot in their media, not just normal media, in their national media, that hey, there is this diplomatic standoff between Canada and India, and
Hmm.
there is some Sikhs are involved, and Sikhs have been in Canada for almost more than 100 years. Sikhs are not recent immigrants. There's deep history between Sikhs and Canada, going back. Probably they were one of the first settlers, or especially on the west coast. But that it has never been very noisy. But recently, for last 2 years, I'm pretty sure even you would have noticed like what's going on with this Khalistan movement.
Hmm.
So, and I think it's very important for people to learn the facts. Now, you might not want to learn it. It's probably an extra piece of information, but the fact is, it is there. It is important to know about it because it has become an issue of sovereignty for Canada. And you'll say, why it is an issue of sovereignty for Canada? And that's what I want you guys to hopefully, when I present the facts of what happened, all the patriotic Canadians will realize that the sovereignty and national security of Canada is at stake here. With that being said, I have a small presentation which I think will probably be easier to walk through. You guys can see it, right? Let me
Yep,
blow it
it's
up.
up on our screen.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So the first slide, India versus six, Canada and US. I've deliberately named it because on one side there is India, and the other side there is the Canadian government, US government, and the diaspora six. And you see them, this gentleman holding this flag of referendum that is being conducted for Khalistan by the diaspora six. So before we, this is just kind of a timeline, just to give you a sense of why this issue suddenly became important. So what happened on 18th June 2023 was that a Canadian Sikh was murdered outside his place of worship by a couple of assassins, and 57 bullets were pumped into his body
Wow.
on Father's Day. He was a very he was kind of a local hero, a community hero, was well known across communities as somebody who was active during the wildfires, during the floods. But he was a controversial figure for the Indian government because he was also involved in running a referendum for diaspora Sikhs to kind of vote whether they want a free country for Punjab, for the state of Punjab in India. And the Indian government didn't like it at all, and they had labeled this guy as terrorist, and he was murdered. Nobody knew that it was the Indian government, but the Sikh community knew what happened, and there was a lot of hue and cry. And finally, on 19th of September 2023, Justin Trudeau stood up in the parliament and basically informed the Canadian system, or I would say the nation itself, that this Canadian, was murdered by Indian government hired assassins. And
now, this was in Canada, this murder in BC?
In Canada, in Surrey, BC, right outside a Gurdwara, a Sikh place of worship, on Father's Day, if you remember, 18th June. And this gentleman had a family, 2 young boys, handsome young boys who are doing luckily very well now. A family, a typical very successful immigrant story, came without anything, set up a plumber's business and, worked hard, built a house, built a reputation for himself in the community, but then got cut short due to, his activism. Mm-hmm. So now when Trudeau announced this on 19th September 2023, he did not announce it in vacuum. In June, the US government had already arrested a couple of people that the Indian agents had hired in the United States to conduct assassinations of Sikhs of American Sikhs. So on 29th November 23, the New York, the Department of Justice in US filed a charge sheet, or what we call indictment, in a New York court, claiming that that an Indian agent was in touch with a couple of assassins who ended up being DEA agents, and was paying them money to get 20 to 23 different American Sikhs murdered. And that Indian agent who was doing this over phone, his name is Nikhil Gupta, and this gentleman, when he was traveling to Prague, they have arrested him, and it is in their custody in Prague. So that was something another landmark event that happened. And then on May 3rd, 2024, the Canadian government arrested 3 Indian nationals for the murder of Sardeep Singh Nijjar. And then on 17th of June, this Indian agent who was in Prague got extradited to United States. And then on 14th October 24, another landmark event happened, which is, RCMP commissioner of Ottawa did a press conference, and not sure if many of you have seen it, wherein he came and laid very, very serious allegations about, what's going on the Canadian soil and what kind of activities the Indian consulates are involved in, that they are hiring assassins, that they are trying to kill activists, they are using, criminal elements, and they are basically all kind of nefarious activities that they could be involved in. Now,
was this in the U.S. They gave this presentation?
No. This is RCMP commissioner. He gave this presentation from Ottawa.
Okay.
Yeah, I have this live, and in between we can run, and this is very serious. Everybody should watch this. The claims he made were, pretty serious. And he said he's doing this. He's coming and informing it to the public to basically disrupt the operations of the Indian consulates. That they were to such an extent that he was worried about, the security of many people, and that there are multiple Canadians who were on the, warning for a threat to their life from foreign agents. So he did that press conference at the risk of, jeopardizing some of the investigations, but it was important to disrupt those activities. And so while all this is going on, there's also this Foreign Interference Commission which is going on in the background. And the Foreign Interference Commission, if many of you have been following, came with a very scathing report on, how much foreign interference we are seeing from foreign governments, which include China, but India, and how India has infiltrated almost every single element of Canadian society, that they have people in media, and they are trying to pump in money to certain political candidates and political parties. And more so, they are basically indulging in killing or, blackmailing or suppressing some of the Sikh diaspora within Canada. Now, this was news for Canadians, just to say, but this was not news for the diaspora Sikhs.
Right.
Indian consulates have been indulging in what today is called transnational repression. the Indian consulates in Canada, US, UK, and Australia have been for last 35, 40 years, they've been very active in kind of, monitoring where the Sikhs are, not just monitoring, but also blackmailing them, threatening their family members, or getting some of them murdered if the need be in their, scheme of things. So on 17th October, then there is New York actually indicted another Indian national, Mr. Vikas Yadav, who was a serving member of India's intelligence service, and he is still in India. He has been then caught by the Indian intelligence and kept there, but they also indicted this gentleman. So this is what caused. Now, in all this thing, why Trudeau was kind of standing up in Parliament and claiming this is an issue is his claim was that while we have all this evidence, the Indian government is refusing to cooperate with us and is refusing to stop these activities. That they basically are adamant that they are going to, continue these activities until and unless Canada basically agrees to their demands, which quote unquote are generally, that you clamp down on these Sikhs who criticize our government. So that is the kind of this background. Now,
can I ask a question just before we move on to this one? What's the official opposition or the Conservative Party saying during all of this? Are they opposing this, or are they just kind of silent to this and letting Trudeau go ahead and provide this information to Canadians?
Yeah. So the official stance of the Conservative Party has been weaker than what I would expect it to. Like, as a Canadian, and I'm speaking as an American, I'll let you guys decide. I know there's all this divide between the left and the right. I think the Conservative Party's official stance is that they condemn any foreign interference, but Trudeau should release all the evidence and make it public. Now, Trudeau, the Liberal Party, Trudeau said, we are willing to give him the security briefing. Like, if he takes the security briefing, we can show him all the evidence, but we cannot make every evidence public because it will jeopardize all the, it will jeopardize all the relations, diplomatic relations, plus also the investigations which are ongoing. Unfortunately, it is very unfortunate that, and I have no truck in it. I tell you, I'm a conservative myself. I support the Conservative parties more, but it was disappointing that, I can't pronounce his name. Pierre is the name, like Pierre.
Yeah, then Poilievre. Yep.
Yeah, Poilievre. He has refused to take the security briefing because that is, I just can't understand why he did that.
His claim is they require non-disclosure as well. He can't say anything after he sees it, and I think he's trying to push for that. But that's his claim, so I'm not sure what else there is to it.
Yeah. If people want to buy it, like if I was in his position. And I think Pierre has missed kind of a political, and we'll talk about it. I think this was a moment for rally around the flag for the Conservatives. Hey, this is Canada, whose sovereignty is under attack, and let's kind of, all our differences aside, let's kind of not have a foreign government tell us, that your citizens cannot say X, Y, Z because we don't like it. But that unfortunately did not happen, and that to me is kind of a problem, because that means that our divisions are now going to be exploited by foreign states who can then, manipulate media and then kind of interfere to an extent where they can just make conservative fight the liberals, and while they keep doing what they're doing. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit more, but this is kind of the facts of the case. And but then you will ask yourself a question, right? And sometimes people ask this question like, okay, India does not like Sikhs raising this voice and kind of, creating this noise about Khalistan. Why are we letting it happen, right? Like, I think that's a kind of a bit tricky, like a slippery slope when you ask that question, because this gentleman who was murdered and most of the people who are being threatened, they're primarily just saying that, hey, India needs to respect human rights of Sikhs. Sikhs have a right to have their right to self-determination. And this person was only conducting a referendum, just a referendum, opinion poll, unofficial referendum. But the Indian government gets very ticked off with these kind of activities, and you can go to any extent to nab it in the bud. So with that said, I think it'll be important to understand why is the Indian government so kind of, what is Indian government? Indian government, quote unquote, in the eyes of people, is a democracy. In popular image, it's kind of maybe another civilized nation. That's the popular image like this. And what is their side of the story? For that, I think it's important to understand the conflict between Sikhs and India in a bit more detail.
Yes, please. Yes.
So you have to look at India. Like this is on the left side that you see the political map of India. You see these different states. These are not states. These are like independent nations in themselves. Each of these states has a different ethnicity, different language, and many times even a different religion. Maybe like Punjab that you see on the northwest here. This small, but this is where the Sikhs are in majority. Then like I cannot speak a single word of any language which is spoken down here. Okay, I can't understand. Like I can probably understand more French than I can understand Tamil. Okay.
Très bien, monsieur.
Yeah, but honestly, like I joke, like I lived actually 6 years down south, okay, in this state called Andhra, and we had a maid who used to come to clean our house, and if tomorrow I had to tell her not to come at 6 and come at 7, I had to literally take down my wall clock and have to show her, like, not 6, 7, because she didn't spoke a single word of English or my language, and I didn't spoke a single word of her language. And so that's how diverse this India is. Not a nation. India is a subcontinent, way more diverse than even Europe. Look at the amount
Okay.
of diversity you see in Europe is nothing compared to the amount of diversity and the number of nations that are inside this. Now, these nations typically used to be independent sovereign nations before British came and colonized this whole land through East India Company. So British came through South, they conquered South, then they conquered Bengal, and the last kingdom that they conquered was Punjab, the homeland of the Sikhs. And on the right-hand side that you see here, the map with this big yellow thing, this is Punjab. We are our homeland. We are very proud of it. And the Sikhs used to rule this entire land, Punjab, and it is one of the most fertile landmass areas. Not one of the. It is the most fertile and most naturally endowed landmass, conducive for human habitation anywhere on the planet. And you can do your research, and you will come to know it's
And that's
named.
where you said you're a farmer, and that was one of the things you mentioned. Is that because this is the history there?
This is the history there. Everybody used to farm, and the
Okay.
whole life kind of revolves around farming, because we have the Panch Ab means five. Panch means five. Ab means in Persian it means water. So it is a land of five waters. So if you see, there are five rivers here. One, two,
Okay.
3, 4, 5. So it is named Panch Ab, five waters. So with very proud history, it's also called the land of spirituality and warriors. It became a land of warriors because this land was so coveted. It will always have invaders coming in from the north, kind of trying to come and immigrate. So my ancestors were probably at some point in time invaders who came in, and so we are such an ethnic mix, but we have formed an identity of our own. We call it Punjabi identity around our language called Punjabi. So we're all very proud of Punjab. So what happened was that when British kind of forcefully created this empire called India, when they were leaving in 1947 after World War II, and British also actually, as I was saying, British conquered Punjab the last. Punjab was brought into the Indian Empire only in 1849. Okay. And they conquered it last, and you'll be amazed that some of the generals who were fighting the British were French. They were French generals from Napoleon's army who were actually who came and trained the Sikh army and were part of the Sikh army who fought the British. But anyways, we lost, so the Punjab became part of the British Empire. And when British took over, the British were very impressed by the Sikh warrior culture and uprightness, and they basically took Sikhs as almost as partners. And the British and Sikh formed a very, I would say, a relationship of mutual admiration, and that lasted very well till the British were there in India. And the Sikhs, who were only 1% of the population of this subcontinent, they were more than 40% of the fighting element of the British Indian Army. Okay, so
They're
that's where
warriors.
that's where our history comes from. Like we either were farmers or warriors, and that was the most preferred profession.
Mhm.
And the British channelized it very well, and that energy and that warrior spirit to kind of form a very disciplined army. And then that army was actually played such a critical role in World War I and World War II as well. And if you'll go, you'll see there are, like, I think more than 85,000 Sikh soldiers got killed in Second World War. So everyone, like, if you ask my grandfather, like everybody's of my age, everyone's grandfather had fought the Second World War, literally.
Okay.
So that's the history. But when the British left in 1947, they ended up leaving this empire. They ideally, what they should have done is they should have made all these nations free, and they said, okay, we created colonial empire, let's decolonize, we are going back. But they didn't do that, and they didn't do that because they had to leave with all these people, and they had to strike some kind of a deal with people who were there. So there were two major parties at that point in time: the Hindu Congress and the Muslim League. So they struck a deal with them. They divided the empire into two parts: Hindu India and Islamic Pakistan, purely based upon religion. Okay. And the
Hmm.
Sikhs, who were a minority, but like very tiny minority, but they always punched above their weight. They were left given no choice. They were given a choice: either become a minority within most Islamic Pakistan or become a minority under Hindu India.
Oh, wow.
Now, so the Sikhs had, like, both the options were very bad, but the Sikhs then started negotiating with both of them. And the Hindu Congress promised the Sikhs that if you decide to come to India, then we will give you autonomous land in another northwestern part of India where you will have full autonomy, and you can run, and we will just be defense and foreign affairs. The Sikhs said, okay, good deal, we are fine with it. And the Sikhs then voted for partition of Punjab. You see, Punjab, this is the old Punjab, that the Hindu and Sikh majority Punjab should be given to India, and then the Muslim majority Punjab should be given to Pakistan. So, sorry. So that is the history. So Sikhs came to India, having Sikhs had to migrate in large numbers, more than 1.5. But there was deadly ethnic cleansing that happened in 47. More than 1.5 million Punjabis, Sikhs and Muslims, who were killed. They murdered each other because they had to leave everything on, because there was this division of purely based upon religion. So,
Hmm.
so the Sikhs ended up in eastern Punjab, this side of the border now. Okay, and they are in majority. Punjab used to be big. It used to have Himachal and Haryana, but then it was further divided into Hindi speaking, Punjabi speaking. They ended up in this yellow portion, Punjab, and they are in majority now. But what happened was that the Indian government reneged on all the promises they made to the Sikhs. So they formulated a constitution where you had a powerful central government which had all the power, and the state governments were totally, disenfranchised. The Indian constitution on paper had fundamental rights, but literally the people were given no fundamental rights. It had 4 lines of fundamental rights, and then 400 lines of how the state can take that right away from you. So there was no right to liberty, no right to life, freedom of speech, religion, whatever. So the Sikhs
Can I
never.
just ask a question here?
Yeah.
Do you think that the rights are given to you from your government, or are they supposed to be protected by the government? Because it's a different mindset. Like, are you
Yes.
granted rights by your government, or
Yeah.
do you have the rights and they need to be protected by the
Yes.
government?
So that's the conflict between the Sikhs and the Indian government. We Sikhs, as a Sikh, we believe that the rights are God given,
Right.
that the government is a negative entity, and the people should define the powers of the government. That is the
Right.
Sikh attitude.
Okay, that I
The-
can relate with.
yes, and the Indian attitude, or the people who took power once the British left, the Hindu Congress, their attitude is very different. They look at the state as God itself, like it
Got
should
it.
have all the power. So that's we are getting into now the deeper sides of the conflict, and we'll talk about that as we talk about the philosophy. And you will see that in our attitudes when you will meet a Sikh and quote unquote an Indian nationalist, you will see that difference. Anyways,
Okay.
so this conflict started there. None of the Sikhs, though they had formulated a constituent assembly with 279 people, and they only invited 2 Sikhs. Okay, so we were already disenfranchised. We had no say in the constitution making. But anyways, those 2 Sikhs at least didn't sign it, and they basically walked out of the Constituent Assembly and burnt that constitution there and then, that we don't agree to a constitution wherein you have this all-powerful government and people are basically, just slaves. And
Kind of like what Quebec did with Canada. They didn't or they didn't sign.
oh, I didn't know that's history. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's
same
great.
thing. They just walked away. They didn't sign for the Constitution. They didn't. It didn't work for them.
Is Quebec mainly French?
Oui.
Also,
Yes.
there is this deep Sikh and French connection. I don't know what it is. There's so much similarity. I keep like finding.
Because it sounds like this history and this suppression with a larger majority would be the English, suppressing them inside of a nation. Very similar is what I'm hearing here.
Oh wow! The Sikh rulers, when we had Maharaja Ranjit Singh, I told you he was a big admirer of Napoleon, and so he invited all these. Many of the actually one of the Sikh army flags was the French flag,
Right.
and it had
Cool.
Vaheguru written on it. I think I shared the picture with you. It's kind of very interesting, like this French and Sikh connection. But anyway, we'll and I keep finding this with this Quebec movement as well. Anyway, so the Sikhs never signed the constitution, and they started protesting, saying that the constitution has to be reformed. All very peaceful. This we are talking about 1947 till 1979.
Okay.
So Sikhs will keep organizing, protest march, and the political parties will keep going that we need federalism. It'll be like a regular demand, like probably that is there in Canada today, and they'll always be the forefront. And the rest of India, luckily, the south of India will do that. But those people, if you see, they don't have that warrior mindset. They will remain quiet. They're very good people. The east of India was also not very happy with it, but they will continue with whatever is going on as long as they are left to live somewhat on their own. So, but the Sikhs, they will keep kind of, raising these demands. Now, what happened was in 1977 or 1975, the Indian Prime Minister imposed a military rule over entire country. And again, Sikhs, out of their natural, tendency to fight oppression and tyranny, all of India buckled and just kind of went down in front of the army. The Sikhs was at the forefront of the protest against the military rule, and they basically became the majority prison population in that point in time. That
Mm.
the ruler of India, Indira Gandhi, didn't like. And once the emergency was lifted, that is what we are told. She was very unhappy with the Sikhs, and what eventually happened was, in this time period also there's a charismatic figure which arrived. So these were mainly the six demands, were three demands: federal structure, center to be limited, and the right, to for people to bear arms. Now, this a leader kind of arrived. He was a Sikh preacher. His name is Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala. He arrived on the scene somewhere around 7980, and he in 1982 he started a new morcha called Dharam Yudh Morcha, totally peaceful. He became very popular with the people because of his preachings, and he was a devout Sikh, and he had this charismatic ability to state the truth in such a way that you will be left mesmerized listening to this guy. And even today, if you listen to what he says, every single word sounds like a word of truth. So he basically started Dharam Yudh Morcha. What that means is, he said, people, like, we have to take this to a logical conclusion. So he said, people of Punjab, every day 550 people should gather and give peacefully, and we should fill up all the jails. Now he asked for 50, but every single day at his morcha, more than 5,000 people will line up. The Sikhs will line up to arrest. Now, this caused such a huge problem because there was not a single jail left in all of India. You imagine? Here is India. From right up till north, till south, till east or west, the jails had not a single area left where they could house a prisoner because it was all filled by Sikhs. And this
Wow.
happened in a matter of 1 year. Like, he would call for 50 and 5,000, sometimes 10,000 people will line up to give arrest. And all peaceful. Now, this was a movement which the Indian government knew that it is now taking things to a juncture where they have to relent, which they never wanted to relent. So eventually what they did was, they made up a, as the government does, oh, this guy is a terrorist, he is asking for, a separate country. He never asked for a separate country. His demands were actually enshrined in a written document that he accept, this is what I want, and this is what the government should give. And then they basically, and his followers at that, and he was ensconced in Golden Temple. Basically he lived in Golden Temple, which is our spiritual center, the picture that I showed to you. So the Indian government then decided to put a martial rule on Punjab, and then simultaneously, basically, army took over that state in a matter of days, and the army attacked with every single weapon it had, like the Golden Temple where this person was living. And it is one of the famous last stand. It was called Operation Blue Star, but it should be one of the famous last stands in human history that you can ever know of. He was hardly around maybe 100 Sikh youth, villagers, young men, who probably barely learned how to fire a rifle. They took on that army of almost like 100,000 people. A full division attacked actually the Golden Temple. A division is almost like 15,000 fighting men.
And
And
this is while a whole bunch of Sikhs are in jail too. So you
yes,
don't. Okay,
correct.
so there's a bunch of people locked up, and then they come at you. Okay, go on.
Correct. And then the Operation Blue Star, and this happened in this Golden Temple area, and this area is the Golden Temple is right in the middle of the city. Okay, Amritsar city is very populated, but Golden Temple is like it has. Maybe I can show you a picture if I have one here. It has. Yeah, I think it's important to show you guys a picture. Just give me a sec.
Well, this is definitely lessons we haven't learned in Canada. Like, I didn't realize that they were all basically nations, kind of under an empire, and it probably would have been better if they just separated everybody into nations. But for
Yeah.
whatever reason, they didn't. And I was not aware that there was a struggle in the early '80s to try and have. And it didn't sound like you get the separation. You were actually kind of clear. It's not separation. It was the demands, which basically gave you your own governance and protection. Not much more than that. Am I correct so far in that little summary?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was just plain demands for federalism, and in written form. And the only thing people were doing were, just giving a rest. But what happened was, now because you have such a vast public support. So this is what happened. This was where he was living. You see, this is our you can call it we holiest place for Sikhs. We call it a spiritual capital, Amritsar. And this is
Like the
Golden
Vatican in Rome, almost.
like the Vatican. We don't have a priesthood in Sikhi, sorry,
Mhm.
but so we don't believe like certain places are more holy than others. But we believe that But this has been our political and spiritual capital, because
Okay.
this is where
It's beautiful, by the way.
yeah, it's very popular. It feeds almost 100,000 people every single day. So 100,000 people get free food here every single day through a community-run kitchen. Okay, just people around the city, they come and just do service, and it's not organized. It's just community-run, and that you see in many of the gurdwaras. You'll go, you'll see free food. That's basically community just getting together and cooking food. So this you see this, and it's very important to understand this structure. This is the Golden Temple. This is where, if you go to gurdwaras, you will see Guru Granth Sahib. That's our scripture. We call it the Guru. It has teachings of 5 of our gurus, Sikh gurus, and 15 different saints whom we call enlightened beings. And some of them were Hindu, some of them were Muslim, but they spoke the truth. And their hymns are compiled in it, and we call it the eternal teacher. So the Guru means teacher. So we learn from him. And so you will see the scripture is housed here. And opposite to see, you see this building. This is called Akal Takht. So our fifth guru gave us sixth guru. After our first guru, whose main message was, the main message of Sikhi was that, that God is one, all human beings are equal, and the purpose of life is to realize oneness with that supreme being. We started getting persecuted by the Hindu casteist elite as well as the Muslim rulers of that time. And
okay, you use a word there. I think you need to explain to Canadians. Casteist. What is that?
So one of the teachings of Sikhi is that we have to treat all human beings as equal. So, and that is contrary to the core Hindu caste system. The whole Hindu or Brahmanical system is based upon caste system, or called Varna Ashram, which means that the society has to be organized based upon your birth, and certain people are supposed to be priests who should have all the power.
So it's a hierarchy?
Hierarchy, yes.
Okay.
And then the certain people are supposed to be priests, and the priests generally have all the hierarchy, and they have different rights, and they have different punishments for different crimes. So obviously the people on the top, they get all the lovely things, and then you have a second tier of warriors, and the third tier, and the fourth tier, and then the bottommost, they have no rights. Like, you can even if you cross somebody's shadow, you can get punished to death because you cross somebody who's higher than you. It's a terrible system of racism which got kind of embedded. So the Guru revolted against it and said, nothing doing. All human beings are equal. And he basically, in India, like in such a divided society, wherein nobody will leave alone taking water from a lower caste person, they won't even let the shadow of the lower caste person cross them. Okay, that would mean death sentence for the lower caste guy. So there the Guru said, no, everybody is equal, and he started this concept of community kitchen, that everybody will sit on the floor as one and eat food cooked from the same kitchen.
Good.
So this became an attraction for many of the lower caste folks. So that was not very conducive to, the elite or the priestly class of the Hindus called Brahmins, and they were always in hand and glove with the Muslim rulers. And because and the Muslim rulers didn't like it, because they were like, okay, who are these new Sikhs and new religion? And so the Sikh, the casteist elite of Hindus and the Muslim ruler, they started persecuting Sikhs big time during our
Okay.
times of our gurus. So that is what, when our sixth guru then gave a concept, and that's why I'm kind of walking you through it. That's He gave us a concept that it is not just enough to aspire for spiritual realization. That is the topmost goal of life. We call it piri, but he gave the concept of miri. He said miri and piri. The miri means you have to be armed all the time as a soldier and live the life of a soldier, and be ready to fight tyranny whenever you see it, wherever you see it, against whomsoever you see it. So
Well, let me
he,
help. Let me help North Americans for a second. That's the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
that
That's
is
the
correct.
same thing. That's exactly what they say. You need to be able to be armed, a regulated, well-regulated armed militia against tyranny. So that's the same thing, right?
It is exactly the same thing. And
Okay.
lo and behold, when I came to US, I didn't know about America and American Constitution. When I started reading American Revolution and what these guys were talking, it's so unique that there are these two people, the Sikhs here and the Americans here, and their values are so same. The things they're fighting for are so same. Their struggles were so contemporary, but separated in time and geography. But the
Hmm.
concept and what they were fighting was so same. And that's why I became a student of American Revolution and American Constitution. You see half of the library behind me is that, and it's just uncanny, the resemblance between the two.
And
And
just so you
anyway,
know, Canada has no such thing. In fact, in Canada, you cannot do that. We just saw guilty verdicts in Canada for the exact same thing. Being able to prepare arms against your own government is a
yeah,
guilty verdict here in Canada. You get prison for that. So we do not have the same philosophy here.
yeah, I know. I see that. I feel that anytime I go for a match into Canada, I see the amount of like scrutiny that they make me go through is
Hmm.
is only slightly better than what happens in India. Okay,
Right.
so
Okay.
so I'm like, anyway, so to this concept, right? So I think this concept is important because so it's not enough to just it's the most important goal is to attain spiritual enlightenment, but you have to preserve your body, and there is tyranny in the world, and you have to be ready to fight tyranny to be able to live in a society where you have freedom of religion, where you have freedom of speech. So you have to live like a life of a soldier, and every individual is a sovereign. So we
Right.
Sikhs consider that individuals are sovereign. And then he gave another concept, our 10th guru gave another concept of Khalsa, which meant saint soldier. So and that, he said, is the highest form of living that a man should aspire for. A man should we never claim that I'm a Khalsa, like I'm trying to be a Khalsa. So there's an ideal human that we try to be. What is that ideal human? That ideal human is one who believes in God, who meditates, who takes the name of God, who does hard work, who is a householder, have a family, but at the same time is a soldier, can fight tyranny, and is brave, and never be a bystander. When something happens, he intervenes. So that is the supreme form of Khalsahood that we all aspire for. We call it the Khalsa Brotherhood.
And
And
we
so
may call that a patriot here, maybe similar to a patriot here.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you see these two flags here. These two flags are yellow flags,
Yes. Yes.
right? So one flag signifies saintliness. The other flag signifies soldierliness, miri
Okay.
piri. But one of the flags is just a couple of inches lower than the other, and that is the spiritual. The spiritual flag is a couple of inches higher than the flag of the soldierliness, because the utmost, but only just a couple of inches, okay, just to signify that one should never forget the ultimate aim, because everything, all this creation is created by one God. We are all one. Our differences are just temporary. So
Okay.
that being said, when the Indian army basically attacked, that the person Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala that I talked about, who was running that movement, he was ensconced in this building. This building, this second building you see with the golden dome here, that is
Yes.
the Akal Takht, which is this is our spiritual capital, Golden Temple in the middle of the water, and right opposite to it is we call Akal Takht. Akal means the everlasting or undying God, and Takht means his seat. So we believe that the sovereignty belongs to the God and his creation. So, so this was always, a symbol of individual sovereignty for the Sikhs. And
Mhm.
when the Indian army attacked, they attacked through this complex. They tried to take him down. There were hardly 100 odd young men. They couldn't. The battle lasted more than 7 days, and in that battle, the day the army attacked, it was the most holiest day for the Sikhs in the year. It was a celebration of the first, our first martyr of the Sikhs. He was our fifth teacher. They picked deliberately that day to attack when the whole complex was filled with thousands and thousands of pilgrims. And then they launched the attack, and it is estimated now. The different estimate, government gives an estimate of 2,000, but the unofficial estimates, which I believe in, some estimates go up to 15,000. But I think my research shows that more than 5,000 pilgrims died in that particular operation in a matter of 3 to 7 days.
Was there any warning? Did they say we're going to come in there, or they just came?
Yeah, they just came, and then when the if you listen to the army officers, they say we sent out a van outside the perimeter with a loudspeaker telling people to come outside. But imagine a van going here with a small loudspeaker. You see how huge this complex is.
Right.
Nobody can listen to anything inside. So they did their quote unquote duty, but like it was ineffective. And uh, and when they launched the operation, like they sent in armies. Like they tried through infantry. They used their top infantry battalion, their special forces, anything, but like they couldn't even reach, they couldn't even cross this particular tree. So eventually they used artillery, every form of artillery. They had, artillery guns parked outside here, who was trying to shell this small building right in the middle of the city. Imagine using artillery guns to shell right in the middle of the city. This is a bustling city. And then they had helicopter gunships. They couldn't crack through. Their special forces couldn't crack through. Then what they did eventually was, once they knew that they're not going to get in, they bought in the tanks. So they bought around 15 tanks into the perimeter, and they basically lined them up here, and they just started pounding this building. So the picture that I show you, if you will show you the picture of the, this is the famous picture after the, oops,
After the shelling?
after the shelling. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, so General Jagjit Singh Arora, he the famous war veteran, he counted, he went and did some research on how many shells were fired. So in his estimate, more than 115, tank shells were fired on this small building to kill one man.
Hmm.
And this is after they have tried every single thing to kind of take him out. It was probably, most washed up, or I don't know whether it was deliberate. Many Sikhs claim it was a deliberate operation to teach Sikhs a lesson. I think it was both. I think at a political level, it was deliberate to teach Sikhs a lesson. On the military level, I think it was just pure incompetence. The local commanders and all, they just didn't knew what hit them. They thought that they will come in and Sikhs will just lay down their arm. These are just villagers, like 100 odd young men. What are they going to do? But what they didn't count was that among these fighters was another general. His name is General Shahbeg Singh. He was ex-Indian Army, one of the most decorated soldiers of the Indian Army, and who was actually, persecuted by the government for being a Sikh and being like too upright. And he came and he joined the group of Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala. So he had formed, some basic defenses, and he had trained those village youth, on how to hide, how to fire, when to fire, and they basically, the resistance they gave was, tremendous.
Well, they're warrior class. We know that. And then if they're very strategic and structured, it's going to be a very difficult class to get through.
That's correct.
So
That's
you
correct.
held your ground. All right.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And it's not the first time. This is like our history is replete with these instances where there's not a single battle Sikhs have fought where we are not outnumbered. So our battle afoot of like 21 people fighting 100,000, 21 people fighting 50,000. That's what but not never surrendering. That has been our
Right.
Hopefully our aim, and hopefully we keep true to that. This is a kind of a image, like, so this operation happened, people got killed, the army washed up or was deliberate, whatever be the case, but the inhuman treatment they gave to the dead was just just mind-boggling. So the pilgrims, what they would do is they will hide in these rooms outside that perimeter, right? So many of the pilgrims died out of thirst, because when the operation was going on, the army won't let any water inside, and won't let them come outside, and will actually, they started throwing grenades inside, because they didn't trust anybody who was in these rooms. So the army basically killed every single pilgrim in these, hiding in these rooms. And you can see the number of rooms that are there. Okay, these are thousands of rooms across that. It's a huge building, and these are thousands of rooms. So this picture, and once this operation, every single militant was killed. You have 5,000 bodies of innocent civilians. No, the army never picked up their bodies and cremated them properly. You know what is this picture? These are pictures of mothers coming
Mm.
from villages trying to search for the dead bodies of their kids.
Oh, wow. Wow. Like, we remember the pictures of 9/11 and the people coming to try and find the missing people and how heartbreaking that was. This would be very similar to that.
Yeah. And whatever dead bodies they eventually cleaned, they never gave them even, proper, like, they'll basically take the dead bodies like animals' bodies and put them like in a pile and burn them, as if like they can't even burn like one single individual. And so what happened? This is June of 1984, and in October of 1984, the Sikhs, basically two Sikhs, assassinated the Prime Minister of India as a matter of revenge for this act. And she was shot dead. She was the one who ordered the attack. So those two Sikhs kind of shot her dead, right in outside her own home. And this happened in end of October, 28th October 1984. But when this happened, there were the Indian government organized, and I'm specifically using the word the Indian government, because it was not just the people. At a people level, Sikhs have had great love and affinity with the people of India, but the state was the state was being run by this casteist elite, which always saw the Sikhs as a problem. So they organized a mass genocide. In a matter of 3 days, 30,000 innocent Sikhs were murdered throughout India. This map that
Oh,
shows you which all states the murders happened. Obviously, only in the state of Punjab, where Sikhs were in majority, no Sikhs were murdered. But in every other state, starting from the national capital, New Delhi, in Delhi itself, more than 5,000 people were murdered. Sikhs were murdered, just burned to death on the streets, on the roads. Yeah, you name it, and every kind, raped, mass rapes, gang rapes, and this happened in a matter of 3 to 4 days. And once this happened, the Sikhs were obviously enraged, especially the Sikhs in diaspora, because the Sikhs were always like Sikhs always have been adventurous, moving out and migrating to different countries. And then I'm going to give you a speech. And the World Sikh Organization was formed in Canada, and the head of that organization at that point in time was Dr. Narinder Singh Kapani. That's what you see on the picture. He's a Nobel Prize winner. Okay, the fiber optics and the internet that we use today he's called the father of the fiber optics. And this is the
okay.
speech he gave when he formed the World Sikh Organization. And I think he was Canadian or American. I don't know. I forget. The fact of the matter is that the massacre of the Sikhs in India in the year 1984, which totals approximately 50,000 Sikh men, women, and children, is something that they want to hide. 10,000 Sikhs mercilessly butchered in Delhi alone, and similar holocausts occurred in practically all major cities in India between 1st of November and 6th of November 1984. Ladies and gentlemen, it is shameful that the so-called largest democracy in the world had the members of the parliament leading mobs of prisoners and gundas to go out, burn the properties of the Sikhs, burn Sikhs alive, kill their children and women, raped by 15 men. Yeah, so I just want to also go through it fast, so I cut it through, and I know we are almost 1 hour into it. So that's what, like, happened. So it kind of mobilized all the Sikhs across the world, and the Sikhs first time then we have something called a concept of Sarbat Khalsa. So if we Sikhs have like a existential crisis on the community, we have a concept called Sarbat Khalsa. We give a call from the supreme body that we have. We call it Akal Takht Jathedar, the same building that he sits in. He gives a call for Sikhs to come together. So any Sikh can come together. So more than 300,000 Sikhs gathered. Sarbat means everybody. They gathered and then they gave the call of Khalistan. That the first time in 1986 that the Sikhs then said, hey, we are not going to live with India. We are going to have a separate country to have our own freedom and religion. So that is when the Khalistan movement kind of started. Now that also became a militant movement. The Sikhs took up arms, started attacking the police stations and the Indian state machinery, and the Indian state reacted in a brutal way. They didn't react like by let's kill the militants. What they did was they basically imposed jungle rule in Punjab. What jungle rule meant was that the police and the army was given free hand to kill, murder any Sikh whom they don't like, no questions asked, no proof required. Now
Oh,
that
wow.
was so. What that started was, I grew up in that time period. Like if you were a baptized Sikh looking like me, you had a death warrant right on their face. You could be picked. So people will get picked up. Some police guy wants money, and they will just blackmail the family to pay money, and then they will kill that guy, because the more people you kill, the more promotions you will get. So it was a horrible period. I think we lost. If you have to read United Nations Human Rights Organization reports at that point in time, um, estimates vary. Some say 300,000 Sikh youth were murdered in a matter of a decade. I believe more than 100,000. I don't know the exact figure. Were picked up and murdered. There's an organization called Insaf. There are multiple reports on this. On the human rights abuses. There's an organization called Insaf which has mapped some of the dead or the people innocently who were picked up and extrajudicially murdered. I encourage people to go and see, that website to see, look at the data. So
Wow.
while that is going on, the Sikhs very recently started this call of referendum movement. Like Sikhs keep coming up with all kind of ways to raise voice against these atrocities. So there are different groups. Like there is one group called Sikhs for Justice. They said we are going to conduct a referendum. So it is nothing more, honestly, from my view, than an expression of Sikhs to say, hey, people deserve human rights. Okay. Oh yeah, there's a new glare on my screen. Yeah, sorry about
It's
that.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
You can keep going.
yeah, that's happening because of, I think, the sun is coming down and I have to figure something out on. Sorry about that. But yeah, so that is that's kind of the background. Then the referendum that is currently going on. There's an organization of Sikhs. Um, there's a person who formed this organization, and this referendum he's conducting among diaspora Sikhs in Canada, US, UK, wherever. Sikhs come out and vote. That vote carries no official binding, obviously, but it's a way of just expressing ourselves, saying that Sikhs deserve their right to self-determination, that the Indian government, should stop violating the human rights of the Sikhs. But that is, unfortunately, like we and you probably will not get it. Like if you are born and brought up in Canada or US, we feel that sometimes the government putting one guy in jail is tyranny, and rightfully so. It is tyranny. I'm not kind of lessening that thing, but then there is like real tyranny. Like that real tyranny is like somebody, the police inspector does not like your face, and he can pick you up, and he can murder you and torture you, and cut your body in 1,000 pieces. Nobody's going to ask him a question, and then that can happen for 100,000 people around you, and nobody's going to ask a question, because then you're going to get murdered. The army might be sent against you. Sorry about this glare. I think I have to.
It's moving. Just keep going. Yeah. Don't let it distract you.
Yeah. So that is what is going on. And I always say the Khalistan movement and the Sikh movement is a movement which basically saying people have the right to be sovereign. Governments don't have the rights to tell people how to live their lives. And it is a nation's right to decide what kind of government they want, how they want to run their life, how they want to run their society, and then they should have freedom of religion, freedom of speech. And unfortunately, we have systems, we have colonial empires, the legacy of the British rule. When British left, it is British left. The empire didn't leave. The colonial empire that they had created, the power structure they had created to suppress the people, they just gave the reins of that structure to a casteist elite within India, which is just 10% of the population. And that elite is even worse than the British because it is not even neutral.
Hmm.
So, and now that elite has become, it is not only suppressing 90% of those lower caste and poor people. People don't know 80% of the people in India live at less than $1 a day. They're subhuman. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so the only people in that subcontinent who are strong enough, who are, uh, oh, what happened to my image at all?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
God. He's shining a light there.
Yeah.
Uh,
What happened? Yeah.
yeah, but we also have an elite class here in Canada called the Lutheran elite. I'm horrible at saying that, but that's a small group in the Ottawa area, Quebec, Ottawa, Ontario area, and they rule everything. They're bilingual and they rule everything. It makes about 12% of Canada as bilingual, and this is a group that runs all our government too. So we kind of have something very similar. We're not as oppressed at $1 a day, but we certainly understand in the West and even in the Maritimes in Canada. There you go. In the Maritimes in Canada, how oppressive that little group, that little elite group in the Ottawa region, actually runs things.
Oh, okay. I think I figured out what's going on. I think what's happening is the light is coming directly at my camera.
Camera, yeah.
Let me see if I can do something about this stuff.
There, there you go. That works.
Yeah, I'll have to place something here. Give me a minute, and we'll figure
But
something
there's a
out.
lot of parallels here, especially when it comes to not being treated well, being oppressed. We're not oppressed the same way that you're describing here,
Mhm.
but I do understand why there's some frustration. And even just recently with Alberta, there's talk about separation or independence because we're always taking the money's coming out of Alberta, and we
Right.
don't get any protection for the markets. Like we have a different type of fight, but I
Yeah.
can understand the parallels. Can you talk a little bit about why Canada? So why did the World Sikh Organization start in Canada? And what is it that the Khalistani movement's doing here in Canada? Because we see some pictures, but we
Yeah.
usually see pictures that seem a little bit violent, especially to Canadians
Yeah.
coming out of Canada. And this
Yeah.
is where Canadians will get concerned. Can you maybe touch on some of that?
Yeah. So once, as I said, the Sikh migration into Canada is very old. It is not a recent phenomena. The Sikhs were here since I would say 1860 or even 1870. I was surprised actually. Yeah, once I saw there's an old image I saw of American Civil War, and there was a Sikh gentleman fighting on behalf of the Confederates.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what's going on here? And anyways. Um, so same way, and the Association of Canada and the Sikhs go far back. Then once the Sikhs were the backbone in most of the lumber industry when the West was being explored and set up. So you will see many families here who are more than here for 120 years, 130 years. That was first wave that happened. This is when British were ruling India, but the Sikhs were kind of going all over and settling down just because British were there and it was easy to travel and their passport would take them there. The second wave of Sikhs coming to Canada happened in 80s when the Sikhs started getting persecuted in
Right.
uh, in Punjab in large numbers. Now that wave was not just Canada; it came to UK as well and US as well. And the governments in these and that's where we are so grateful for these governments because we were the persecuted people and they opened up their doors. And the number of Sikhs who came in and they were very grateful that okay, finally we are saved today as a people because of Canada, US, and UK opening its door to us. And if those doors were not open, God forbid, if we would have even survived as a people.
Hmm.
Because the design or the repression of the Indian government was such. Now that kept on going on very well. When you see people raising the Khalistan flag or demand here, it is generally just an expression of we need like if something happens in Punjab, like a farmers movement happened in Punjab, and the Indian government repressed it very badly, so they will do some rally, like somebody will conduct a referendum, but it will generally be a referendum. And sometimes what happens is when Sikhs we do any kind of public procession, arms are part of our profession, like kind of our life. So if you go to the Gurdwara, you will see in the front of the Guru there are swords and arms because we think everyone should carry it mandatorily. So if there's a Sikh profession, a referendum which will come, there'll be like youth which will raise a slogan, maybe with swords in their hands. And maybe somebody will then take those pictures, put them out of context, and the Indian media will take those pictures. There's nothing, there's no violence going on there. But the
Mhm.
Indian media will very smartly take those pictures, and then it has enough meat around it or enough kind of propaganda, I would say, tools at its behest, with almost a billion Indians also roaming around on the internet, that will say, look at these, what's going on. But I
Yeah.
have never seen personally a Sikh protest. Not protest. The Sikhs, when they do, they're not protesting. When they take, you'll say they'll take out a rally, which will be a flag rally. They'll go to a place, they'll raise a couple of slogans, and then they'll come back. There'll be no ruckus, no nothing. But like the media, when you read what is coming out in the media, you'll say as if like somebody came and did something, like especially the Indian media. The Indian media will try to project it like using even the Canadian media to say, oh, the Sikhs are creating some problem. Now, the
Mhm.
Indian strategy is very simple. The Indian strategy is the state strategy is very simple, that let us create so much noise around it. Let us create so much chaos around this stuff that the Canadians, and hopefully we will label the Sikhs look different, they look like Muslims, and then start associating Sikhs as these kind of theocratic terrorists, and create that image, and then tell Canadians, hey, why is your government kind of tolerating these people, creating so much chaos in your country? Look, the trade relations with India are getting messed up. You could have so much money from India, just if you could just shut these guys down and lock
Yeah.
them up, or let us murder them and let the way we want. But the reality is this, Jason, I'll tell you. The reality is this, that, and I became aware of it like 3 years back. I took a sabbatical, and I started studying history, and then I had free time, and I started talking more in community, and I was surprised by the amount of Indian interference, like, and the repression, like the Indian consulates, the how much free hand they had, like in kind of interfering within Western society. The the Indian interference and their power to interfere is phenomenal. And I was always worried, when is somebody going to put an end to it? Today, the Indian government has only Sikhs at their radar, or Canadian Sikhs, or American Sikhs. But once they have the power to shut down the Canadian Sikhs and take their freedom of speech or their freedom of religion, how long will they not use that power against Jason Levine?
Right.
They will. So it's not a matter of Sikhs, or Canadian Sikhs or Khalistan. In reality, this is a question of Canadian sovereignty, because there is a foreign government, India, which has immense power and influence within Canada today, due to lot of and a good portion of that influence is, you said you are not against immigration, but I say I am against excessive immigration.
Oh, for sure, excess. No, no, no. Don't get me wrong. Like,
It has
but
to be
I'm
the
not
right
against.
amount,
Yeah.
and especially I am against immigrating people into what I know. We have Canada and America has a lot of problems, but it is still the best place to live in compared to whatever else is there. Now,
Right.
in that society, if we are going to let people come in who are stooges of foreign governments
Right.
and who are willing to do their bidding, and who are and in large numbers, and are ideologically brainwashed, and I count them two categories. One of those are Islamists who are brainwashed from a religious angle, and then the other category is the Indian nationalists who came and they come as very highly educated, H1B visas. They are on the topmost of the positions in media, in politics, but in reality, their deep loyalties with the Indian regime and the Indian system. And what they are trying to do is they're trying to divide the society here, and kind of in reality, if you probe their hearts, they hate West like anything, because in their mind they want the supremacy of this Hindu civilizational India. The same, And all these people are that same casteist elite which is repressing that 1 billion people in India.
Right.
That casteist elite is coming here on these high skilled immigrant bases. And because they're very educated, they are very articulate, and they are able to kind of get their propaganda through on behalf of the Indian government. We Sikhs, we used to be just farmers and soldiers. But we started. I am probably the most articulate Sikh you will meet. The other guy you will meet is just a hardworking farmer, and that has been a problem. And so they are able to get away with murder. Like, and I keep bringing up the case of that bombing, Air India 182 Kanishka bombing. Anybody who can do an objective analysis of the data that is available, the number of CC's agents who have openly stated in writing that the Indian government did it and we buried it because of diplomatic relations with India is just phenomenal. But the Indian government used that same incident that they conducted and they use it to paint this entire community as terrorists. And they still use that as a propaganda item today. Because
Right.
people
It's a strong one too.
It's a
Especially
strong
for
one
Canadians.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a strong one, but that's the power of when governments have power, they can spend money on media. And then when you can have an ideologically brainwashed population, I say 10% of India, but 10% of 1.5 billion is not a small number.
Mhm.
There's 150 million brainwashed upper caste Indian nationalists who think this whole subcontinent of India should be Hindu, should speak one language, should have one religion, should have one way of living. And then, mind you, it is the oldest and it is the oldest, the most resilient, and the most accomplished form of fascism existing on the land. It is 2000 years old. This is not new. Now we are going into the deeper side of it.
Can I
And
take the slides down for now?
yeah, good.
Yeah. Can I also a couple questions for you? When you were watching the Freedom Convoy movement up in Canada that was happening in 2022, and then you saw things like the Canadian press put a whole bunch of guns on a table and put it out there, and hey, we arrested a bunch of people. They were going to take over the government. These people were going to, take up arms and kill Canadians. What did you think when you're seeing that kind of narrative break out in Canada? Did it feel the same as what you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about here?
it felt the same. I was outraged by the way the government was treating the truckers. Now, I'll have to give. I'm not aware of the actual realities on the grounds. So I was
That's
just
good because I want to know your perspective as you saw it happen, because I do know the realities. I was in the courts, I met the people, and I understand the truth. So before I touch on that, what was your perspective?
Yeah, I'll tell you when the trucker thing was happening, what I was reading in the media was like things like because I was in America, I was not there. Like the two things which really stood out, which really enraged me was, and I'd still say I don't know the whole facts, and maybe the government was right, and I don't know what that logic is. Somebody has to give me. Like truckers won't enter a certain area, or they have to leave the metropolitan, or like, and they'll be forcibly removed. And then there was something like a lady was being persecuted because she had donated some money and their bank accounts were kind of, that to me was outrageous, at least the way it was coming out in the media. Like, how is that possible? And I remember like there was this movement, and I actually ended up giving some money, a lot of money on that. I don't know to which organization, but I felt bad. I said I have to do something. The only thing I could do was contribute money to those people. But they were talking about, that they were going to be held accountable just because she donated money to that. Why would she be punished just because she gave money if she didn't knew? Even if that money was being, first of all, this whole thing with guns, and like, as a Sikh, to me, everybody should own guns. And to me, like, open carry is a basic human right. Like, to me, it's a human right. Like, I just don't. I sometimes I probably get Canadians find me too excessive, but I'm like, why should I seek somebody's permission to just carry a weapon? I'm not hurting somebody, and like, you're free to defend yourself. And yeah, that is most of the Sikhs, our stand is on that. So most of the Sikhs I have met who are Canadian, they were all with truckers.
Correct. There's lots of pictures of Sikh truckers there. They were very supportive. There was a whole group. And just let me give you a 2-minute breakdown of what we saw on the inside and through my research, because you've done a lot of research on what was going on with the movement. I've done some research on the Canadian side of things.
Mm.
Immediately, they came out with racist things, calling us racist and Nazis. Somebody on day number one for 1 hour was walking around with a Nazi flag, and then suddenly those pictures were everywhere and tainted the entire thing in the Canadian media that way. And then the guns in Coots, it was 15 arrests to accumulate those firearms, and then they put it together, blamed it on 4 guys, called it the Coots Four, and said that they were going to use that as a stockpile of ammo and firearms and equipped everybody to go ahead and fight against government. None of those firearms are open carry in any way, shape, or form. They were all put away and stored someplace else. They were never out in public and never brought to the protests proper, like in the protest itself. They were in the village of Coots, but they weren't actually in the protest itself. But you would never know that unless you actually talk to the people involved. And we still have gentlemen in jail, in prison right now, serving their time. And I was at the trial where the Crown made it very clear. The reason why these gentlemen were convicted by the jury was you cannot preemptively prepare yourself against your government with violent resistance. So here in Canada, that is jailable. In the U.S., it's a Second Amendment. With you guys, it's a God-given right. But in Canada, no, you can't do that. And that is the reason why Tony Olenek and Chris Carber are still in prison today. They weren't convicted of harming a single person. They weren't convicted of a conspiracy to hurt the government or the police, which was one of the charges, conspiracy to commit murder of a police officer. They were convicted of weapons for a dangerous purpose to the public peace. And that dangerous purpose to the public peace was to resist the police if they started to shoot on the crowd. That's what the defense was for Tony Olenek. If we are attacked, we will defend our women and children and men. That's what he's in prison for right now today.
Wow. Well, so this is my viewpoint on this, Jason, because my viewpoint could be unique, right? Because I'm an immigrant. I have kind of an inside view as well as an outside view, right? I have lived in a society which has been very repressive, and I have come here where in America, which is very free. Canada is relatively free to India, but not as free as US. So this is my understanding of when I came in. I got like very conservative, like militant conservative, and like, who are these liberals? I hate them. Like, what are they? Like, I literally started hating anybody who's calling himself liberal. Okay, and then I became wiser. Then I became wiser when I started analyzing the positions objectively. I realized that the gulf probably in the left and right is not much, at least in US, the factual gulf. But the media has created so much animosity that there is no dialogue happening between the left and the right in US. Right. I'm not talking about Canada. I'm talking about US. Okay, US, the Gulf is not that big. There's no dialogue happening between the two elements because, for example, I'll give you a sense like how these left guys feel attacked. Okay, this whole some verdict came from Supreme Court, some Roe Wade versus on abortion. That verdict, the only thing that verdict says is that the federal government cannot legislate on it. It sets that aside. The states have the right to regulate the way they want to regulate. That's the net effect of that judgment, right? So the state laws stand based upon the state you live in, and if you want your state to have a particular type of law, fine. If you don't like the state in US, we have this freedom. We can go to the other state. Luckily, as of now, so it's in a way, like to me, that's a good system. Now, I'm talking to this liberal girl, and she's crying. Okay, that all my rights have been taken away. Like, what's gonna happen? Like these Nazis and fascists. And I'm like, no, nothing has happened. You are still living in Seattle. It is the same law. Have you even read the judgment? And she was like, no. She wouldn't believe it. I'm telling her the fact. Then I realized like the media has put such a big curtain that people are looking at each other as their enemies.
Correct.
And especially the conservative side is actually hard done because their rights are actually getting violated because the conservatives are asking for more liberty. That's where the real grudge should be because, hey, every day you are passing a new law and taking away my right to liberty and taking my gun right. Now I have wisened up to it like that. I think we need more dialogue and more education to kind of, get this going. And I think when I saw like what was happening on the Canadian side, I felt like it is tyranny. But what is the way out? Like I am always thinking of solutions, and why I'm always thinking of solutions is that because I really love both these countries, Canada and America. I know that they are not perfect, but still they are the best places to live if you want some degree of freedom. So how do we maximize liberty in this world? And especially, and I think these are the last bastion of liberty, especially America. And yeah, and I think we have to fight, and we have to constantly educate people. And I think the Canadians could be more militant in their education. I find them to be like too giving. Like, I won't say like it's okay. I won't stand. I won't accept that. Like, it's okay for young men to bring arms, to say we will fight if somebody attacks us. What is wrong with it? But sometimes Canadians give up that right, and they're like they start off from a back foot.
No, we're indoctrinated at a very early age to be very polite, very passive, and to stand back. In fact, in our anthem, we stand on guard for thee, but we never, fight for anything. The U.S. anthem, bombs bursting in the air, like is very, very willing to fight for what they want. In Canada, we're passive. That's one. And number two, we have a lot more firearms than even Americans. So we do have firearms, but our government's been taking them away over time, taking them away, and vilifying it. So scaring, the people in the cities. You don't want people running around with these firearms. When truth is, we're using it for hunting, we're using it for critters, we're not using it for people. So firearm culture here in Canada is very different. And then when it comes to our rights, we're still a constitutional monarch. So we're under the Westminster parliamentary system, where we don't even select our prime minister. It's the party that selects it. As we just saw with Mark Carney, who's not elected, he's now going to be our prime minister starting tomorrow. And that's our system. Now, here's the irony. To fix it, we need a separatist movement. Alberta is looking at it becoming a separatist movement. There's a lot of people pushing for it. And it's not to actually carve out Alberta out of Canada. If you really listen to what they're talking about, what they're talking about is seeing whether or not there's a desire through a referendum, much like what you were talking about. And if there is a large desire via that referendum, the hope is Ottawa will sit down at the table and renegotiate the setup of Canada. And ideally, we become a constitutional republic, much like the U.S., not a monarch anymore. So we do elect our leaders, and we would have a vice president and all those kind of things. And this is where Canada could be fixed. But Harjeet, the only way to even get there, independent media. There's no way that our current state-run media is going to help us get there.
Correct.
Right. And that's why you see in Canada Bill C-11, C-18, 63. These are to shut down free speech and media. So our government is trying to shut down the media and remove our firearms and then continue to suppress us. And that's the exact opposite of where we need to be going in order to get to a really true free country. Yeah. So I can see a lot of parallels in the struggles that you're speaking about here, because we have similar ones. But I just want to touch back a little bit before we move over to the second part of the show, the Air India issue. Okay, so in Canada, that's part of our. Where's terrorist attack in Canada? That's how it's painted to us, and it is.
It is.
We never had anything like that.
It's the worst act of aviation terrorism before 9/11.
Correct. Now, what we're told, though, it was Babar, I think it is.
Parmar. Yeah, one guy. Yeah. So they'll pick up one guy and they'll say, "This is the guy who did it."
Right.
Now, tell me the question you have to ask.
Kind of like the Osama bin Laden of 9/11, right? Blame it on one guy, one boogeyman.
Yeah, one boogeyman. But Osama, we could still say he had an organization, and we knew some people who actually came with the planes, right? We know that where they came from. We have some evidence. We could figure out maybe a phone call to them. Here, what we are supposed to believe is, what the Indian media wants to paint is, it wants to hide all the actual data from the people. So this is where the complexity of Air India 182 is. When it happened, the fact is that a lot of people who died while they were Canadian, they were Indians. I'm not saying we are racist, but the fact is that, they died on a shore. Just to give you a fact, when these people died, the Canadian Prime Minister called the Indian Prime Minister offering him condolences. Mm-hmm. It should have been the other way around. That is also a sad reality, that the Canadian public at that point in time did not show much interest in this. So because they didn't show, the public at that point in time, now it is being raked up, But at that point in time, there was not much interest from the Canadian public per se. Otherwise, India would not have gotten away with so much of propaganda, because what happened was nobody got even charged. First of all, and then in 1986, and this is a book in front of me, I say every Canadian should read. It's called
Soft
Soft
targets.
Target: India's Intelligence Service and its Role in the Air India Disaster, written by two top journalists, one from Toronto Star, another from Global Mail, totally based upon the direct testimony of two CC agents. Okay, so people know when publications like Global Star, they say they are anonymous sources, but they are not confidential sources, but they are not anonymous. They know who these
Correct.
people, they are CC agents who came, and so they basically told that exactly who were the people who Indian government was funding, how they were funding Ripu Daman Malik, the guy who was murdered, and he might probably be connected someplace. Millions of dollars to basically hire these, foot soldiers and to do all kind of silly acts, and then how they had planned this entire episode so that they can then blame the Sikhs and delegitimize the Sikh movement globally, and that we are under pressure from our own government. Again, the government, like the missed, and that point in time, there was an external minister called Joe Clark. They specifically name him, how he suppressed the entire investigation and said, oh, you just have to catch some foot soldiers. You cannot go to the level of, naming the Indian government. And that is the reason that they are basically stuck. They can't charge anyone. So till now, nobody has been convicted. We had two court trials, one sham public inquiry. Nobody has been convicted of the conspiracy to bomb the Air India 182. And for heck, we spent $100 million. And for the investigation, this is the most expensive air crash investigated ever in the history of humankind. And none of the three investigation teams investigated it. None of them have conclusively said that a bomb brought it down. That is the level of incompetence. And then we have CC agent after CC agent. Two here. There's one. He published another book called Nest of Spies. So this is what, like, he talked about how the Indian agents have infiltrated Canada. Another book you should read. He also wrote specifically that India did it, and we basically covered it up. And the tragedy is that yes, we covered it up. India did it, but our government still kept having normal diplomatic relationship with a terrorist government. Imagine what type of government. Like we don't like. I don't like my American government, but I'll be like hard pressed, and maybe they do this similar level of act, but still they're in the realm of, you always say maybe true, maybe not true, right? But in India, we know from fact, like 100,000 people killed, like in front of my eyes. I know people firsthand. Innocent people get picked up, killed, murdered. It's the norm of the day. Every police station having a torture cell. It's just amazing what happens out there. So 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 I lost the point I was making, but I think this, to your point that you were saying, I wanted to highlight, like, what is this issue that we have in Canada. I think we have to fight, Jason. But I just want to give us this is what I came aware of very recently. I want to just give a sign of caution. The caution I want to give is that, especially the conservative side, we have to be cognizant that in our fight of liberty, which is our internal fight with our left, that it is not being taken advantage of by some foreign hostile authoritarian regimes like India. Okay, because there is real tyranny outside these borders in India, in China, in other countries, and those regimes are something that people who are born here cannot even think the level of cruelty they can get to. Imagine a country which can murder 100,000 of its own citizens without a blink. What are its intentions with respect to Canada? So those foreign countries are eyeing this division in our societies as well, and they want to play it. So while we have to fight this dual battle, while we have to, like, kind of fight our own people to get our liberties preserved, we have to be very cognizant and be aware when it is the time to rally around the flag. Like this moment, like India murdering a Canadian was India murdering a Canadian. It is not a Sikh versus India issue. It is the issue of Canadian sovereignty, and that's what we have to stand up for.
Okay, it's a little bit clearer to me now, and I'm going to bring up a news article from just last week. So this was announced here in Canada that second hitman sentenced to life in prison for BC murder of former Air India bombing suspect. So this is a conversation we were having before. But when I was going through this, they admitted that they were paid by someone. They admitted that they were hitmen. This is why the title says hitmen, not just murderer. They were paid by somebody. But if you go through this and you pay attention, the name of the person or persons or organization that paid for it is unknown, and it wasn't part of the plea agreement. So we don't have on the court record who sent them. Who do you think sent them?
I think for and to Sikhs like me who know the facts, we know the Indian government killed him, and we know why, and we know exactly why, because he was the biggest asset for the Indian government. He was the main financier of many of the so-called violent extremist Sikhs in Canada, and he was funded $2 million by the Indian government in 1984 itself. He became a big man in Sikh. So this is how the Indian government interferes in Canada. Okay, it will, especially in the Sikh community, it wants to control them. So what it will do is it will fund like a big leader, create like that huge personality, and then make him like in charge of all the community affairs there. Now everything becomes under their control.
Mm-hmm.
So this person, if you read this book, he was directly getting funded by the Indian government, and while he's also funding the Sikh quote unquote extremist militants, while also traveling to India all the while and being their state chief guest. He was in 2000, just before he was murdered, 2 years back, he traveled to India. Imagine, he is the main accused of Air India 182 bombing. Indian government calls him to India. They give him a VIP treatment. He meets the raw intelligence chief. He meets all the home ministers, and they prop him up as he is going to be our bridge with the Sikh diaspora. Okay, and then he comes here, he gets murdered. And this is my speculation based on whatever I know about this case. On the day he was murdered, this is a fact that we know. On the day he was murdered, he was exchanging text messages with the Indian consulate official in Vancouver. The name of that person is Amarjeet Singh IFS. He is on Twitter, very active on Twitter. He was kicked out of Canada after his murder for foreign interference. Okay, he was the guy texting him. He had a meeting set up with this guy just before he was murdered, and then I think what has happened is, generally in intelligence, like you can get in, like all these guys, where they can't get out. It's a mafia, the Indian intelligence. So whether he started talking to the Canadian intelligence, or for some reason he became a liability for them. And obviously he knew too much about Air India 182. And if Canadian government or somebody in Canadian government, especially maybe Trudeau or some people underneath him, who are now interested in reopening and looking at, getting even, because they have this bad blood going with India, this guy will immediately become a liability. Because the first guy they're going to catch hold of is Ripu Dhawan Malak. Come and tell us, and we're going to record it and we're going to show it to the world. And so the Indian government would have no other option but to neutralize him. And that's what I believe. I think that's for the Indian state. And based on what I know of the facts, and that is why we will never know who paid these guys. Now,
well, what I do know is whoever paid him is very powerful, knows how to get people to stay quiet. And the Canadian government didn't seem to be all that interested in finding out, or at least in the court, naming names on who actually paid for it. But they went ahead, accepted the guilty plea. And this is why it's weird to me, because we would normally absolutely want to know who paid for it. And there would be no deal until that happened. But in this case, there is a deal. So it has to be a very powerful somebody or something that's behind that. For the Canadian government to accept the plea, it says, okay, we accept that you were paid, you were a hitman, I think 20 years plus the possibility of probation later. But to get that deal done, we would require the who. We would always want the bigger fish.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the court just said, nah, that's okay. We're not going to go that far with that. We're just going to, I don't want to use the word pin it on these two guys, but that's kind of what it looks like. Yeah. And I suspect when they get out of jail, they're going to have a glorious life after. They're going to be well taken care of, because they don't seem to be taking any defense. They're not fighting to get out. So it seems like they've accepted their fate, and maybe their fate's going to be okay later. And with the Canadian government not finding out who's behind it, this is making me very uncomfortable.
No, I'm pretty sure they have found out who's behind it. It's just they are not letting it out, right? It's just
That's even worse then.
that's a typical story of Air India 1 and 2. Like they knew all through that Indian agents were involved, but they had to cover it under the so-called guise of diplomatic relations. And
Okay.
I'll show you something even more egregious. Okay, now that we are talking about this, because the Canadian court system comes under a lot of questions with what happened in the trial of Air India 1 and 2, where with this gentleman, the picture that you showed, he was the main accused.
Can we do this? Because we are out of time. Let's
Yes.
have you back and we'll dig into this part of it right now. Because the Air India one's a very important one for Canadians to understand a bit more, especially the CISA stuff, the couple books you mentioned. So would you come back and let's just dive right into that one?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it will be great. I would love to.
Okay, let's do that because we do got to cut over now. We're almost out of time, but let's do that. I'll make that commitment to you. We'll find another date and we'll dive into that one somewhere. Okay, Harjeet?
That's awesome.
Okay, let's do that. So let me say goodbye to the audience, and there's going to be a couple questions for you, and then we'll let you get back to your evening.
Okay.
Well, there you go, public. Holy smokes, Canada. Pay attention. There's always more to the story. We know this. If you're into this whole conspiracy thing of 9/11, you know that things aren't right. If you're looking at the freedom movement here in Canada, the Coots situation, you know things are not right. If you're in the courtroom for Coots, you know things were definitely not right. So let's not just believe the media. Look, we know they lie to us. They lie to us. This is part of the thing. It is called propaganda, and Canada is not immune to this. It's happening all the time. There's a reason why they're taking away our guns, and there's a reason why they're attacking people like me. I am not paid by anybody. Hand on heart, God's my witness. Nobody came to me and said, hey, here's some money, have this guy on, let him tell a story. And nobody came to me the first time around either and said, hey, tell the story this way. That's just not the case. I'm reaching out to people who want to talk. We want to hear what's going on. And there's a lot of this history that, of course, we don't know here in Canada. But do make sure that you follow this channel and stay tuned, because I do want to get into some more of this Air India situation, because this is not the first time I've heard this. Harjeet isn't opening my eyes for the first time to this. There's documents missing. The RCMP said, oops, we lost stuff. There's a lot of things that we need to dig into. So make sure you follow this channel and stay tuned, because we're going to be following that up. And by the way, I'm in a very happy relationship. I'm a very happy man. If something happens to me, it's not because I did it. I'm saying that because there was journalists killed covering this stuff. So please share this out there. Make sure that this truth gets out there. And if you have any comments, send it to me. But stay tuned. We're going to get into this a little bit more deeper. So make sure you take care of yourself and your family, and you shake the hand of a neighbor or a stranger. And why do I keep reminding you about this? Is because I love you all very much, and God bless. All right, folks, that's a wrap on the public portion of today's show. Thank you for watching. If you found this valuable, please share it with friends and family. Want to connect with the Lavigne Show community? Become a free member today and join a vibrant space dedicated to championing justice, accountability, and open dialogue. Engage with myself and fellow advocates, and stay in the loop on our latest broadcasts. Want to do even more? Become a supporter for just $7 USD, $10 Canadian monthly. If you can afford more, you're welcome to increase your support, helping us stay truly independent. Supporters unlock full, uncensored live streams, interactive Q&As, behind-the-scene content, and so much more. Ready to join? Head over to thelavineshow.com to become a member or supporter. If you have any questions or need help, email members@thelavineshow.com or call or text 587-673-9955. Supporters, we'll see you shortly. Thank you, and God bless.